Good morning to you. It's Tuesday morning and welcome to the Vicarage here. Lovely to see you and thank you for being with us again this morning for our Bible talk. How are you enjoying the hot weather? Poor, it's hard work, isn't it? I always say about heat, it's all right if you can just sit in the pool with a beer beside you or something like that and relax all day. It's all right, but if you're going to do any work, it's hard work, isn't it? Anyway, I'm not feeling sorry for myself. It's good to be here, good to enjoy the sunshine, and as I said, thank you for being with us this morning. Well, I've said to you many times before, when you read the Bible, one of the ways, one of the kind of hints I would say to making the Bible come alive is don't just read it with your head, but feel it with your heart as well. Feel yourself into the emotions of it. I was talking to a group at some Bible study yesterday, and they were talking about they're studying the book of Hosea in the Old Testament, a book which is absolutely rammed full of compassion and feelings and raw emotions. Wonderful book, Hosea. But this morning's reading, again, is a reading a bit like that. When you read this, when you hear this morning, don't just hear it with your head, but try and feel it with your heart. Try and really get yourself into, there's a massive tragedy here, and I'll tell you all about it. It does have a happy ending. Luke's Gospel, chapter 7, beg your pardon, starting to read out verse 11. Soon afterwards, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the gate of the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow, and with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came forward and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, rise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized all of them, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has looked favourably on his people." The word about him spread throughout Judea and all the surrounding countryside. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Right, as I said, feel yourself into what's going on here. I want to quickfire give you about 5 things to think about this morning's reading, which you can read again later at your leisure and enjoy it and appreciate it later. I think the first thing to see is just the raw compassion of Jesus. What's happened here is an absolute tragedy. This poor woman has already lost her husband. She's a widow. She has one son, and she's lost him as well. Losing a child is always absolutely, utterly devastating. And those days, of course, losing her son would also have meant, for her, losing her only source of income as well. So for all manner of reasons, what you have here is just a massive, massive tragedy. And Jesus, who's going around the countryside with his crowd, arrive in this town called Nain, and this funeral procession is taking on. So they kind of arrive at this moment of utter tragedy, of raw grief. And as I said, feel yourself into the emotion of what's going on here. And it says that Jesus had compassion on her. And what's interesting about it is he didn't just feel compassionate. He didn't just say nice words or give her a card or even give her a hug for that matter. He goes up and he touches the bier, on which the coffin, the thing they held the coffin on. And of course, it would have been an open top thing. So touching that would have meant touching a dead body, effectively, which in those days made a religious person ritually unclean. Which meant that he wouldn't have been able to go about his business and that sort of stuff as well. But Jesus is so compassionate. He cares about this person so much that he goes forward, he touches the bier and talks to the young man, and he rises up and he heals him. So firstly, feel yourself into the just raw compassion of Jesus here in this reading this morning. Feel yourself into what's going on. And recognize that Jesus doesn't just talk compassion. He doesn't just feel compassion. Jesus does compassion at great cost to himself. He doesn't just sit there keeping his hands clean. He touches, and that's what Jesus is like. He doesn't avoid complicated situations. He gets involved and he does things. And here he demonstrates his compassion. And of course, the whole message of the gospel is that God so loved the world that he gave his only son. Who was born, where it was difficult and complicated. And that's what Jesus lived throughout his life. He wasn't just sitting there aloof, keeping his hands clean. He literally did compassion, not just talked it. That's the first thing. The second thing is really about Jesus. And blindingly obvious, it tells you that Jesus has power over death. That so far we've already had Jesus doing all sorts of amazing things: power over sickness, power over demons, power over sin, power over all the Sabbath, and all manner of things he's demonstrated his power over. But in this morning's reading, he actually demonstrates his power over death, and he does it practically by bringing this man to life again. So as well as being Lord over, as I say, sickness, the Sabbath, and always the law and everything else, he now demonstrates that he has power over death too. And let's not forget that, you know, he himself was to die and to rise again later. The ultimate victory. So Jesus has power over death. The third thing, which is a bit more subtle, is that for those people listening, they will know that in the Old Testament, in the book of 1 Kings chapter 17, a man called Elijah stays at the house of a woman, and the young boy and her son dies, and Elijah breathes into him and brings him to life again. And which is quite interesting, because lo and behold, Jesus is doing here something which Elijah did. No wonder they then said, a great prophet has arisen. So he was doing something that he if you like, he was no less than Elijah. That Elijah was a great prophet. No wonder they called him a great prophet. So anything Elijah could do, Jesus could do too. The fourth thing, of course, is that here we have a woman experiencing grief at the death of her son. And let's not forget that a few days, weeks from now, or maybe a few months from now, God, of course, was to experience similar grief, that he was to watch his son die a horrible death on the cross. That's what was going to happen to Jesus. God, Jesus spared the son of this young man from Nain, but of course God lost his only son. God gave his only son. He did it as a massive act of love for you and for me. So Jesus, God in Jesus, raised this young boy to life out of compassion for this woman. But of course, as I say, a few months' time, God was also to experience grief, and that was going to happen. But finally, the final point I want to make really is it says that they glorified God and fear came among them. It's quite interesting. I wonder how we would feel if something similar happened to us today. I think for many people, religion is something that on Christian faith or something, so you can keep it kind of arm's length. Something you do on a Sunday if you want to, and it's all very nice, and everything else, a little bit, But actually, something occasionally happens that kind of makes you, whoa, I mean, for example, I think that's how Saul became a Christian, became Paul, because despite what he'd learned in the past, meeting the risen Jesus was a bit of a game changer. Whatever you may have thought in the past, if he's there, get used to it, kind of thing, and a great thing can change his life. And I think what happens here is that they, in front of this crowd in Nain and this crowd that's followed Jesus, this boy is raised from the dead. This incredible thing happens in front of them, and it kind of, whoa, hang on, this is serious business. This is, this is, God showed up, as Forrest Gump might have said. Something amazing and spectacular has happened here. This is not a game. This is not just something you do on a Sunday morning. This is the real deal. God has turned up. No wonder fear came amongst them, and I wonder how we'd have felt in the same situation. Seeing something as amazing as that happen in front of us reminds us that this is the real deal. This is important. There is power in this, and God himself is at work. Whoa, scary stuff, but they glorified God because it was wonderful too. So, 5 things from these few, I think there's 7 verses here in this reading this morning here. First, you see that in the midst of this awful tragedy, the incredible compassion of Jesus for this woman in her hour of need, in her distress. Secondly, see that Jesus has power over death. He has power over all the other things so far, but he has power over death too. Thirdly, see that this great man Elijah in the Old Testament did this wonderful thing for this widow. Actually, Jesus was able to do it too, and more, if you like, here. Fourthly, know that God himself experienced grief through the death of a son, when his own son, Jesus, died later. But finally, here again, what it must have been like for the people seeing this real amazing thing happen right in front of them. You know, this is serious business. God has turned up. This is the real deal. More to the point, what are we going to do about it?